Good morning, everyone. We are going to start a presentation. My name is Douglas Strong, and welcome to the Department of Housing and Community Development webinar for PLHA program. We are excited you've joined us today, and we appreciate your flexibility switching from the live workshop to a webinar, given the current health concerns. Our goal is to provide you with information and tools to ensure you submit a complete application. In the interest of providing a more fluid presentation, we have specific format for addressing inquiries. As we proceed through our presentation, you can submit your typed questions using the Q&A area provided. Once we have concluded our presentation, we will address your questions. Please be sure to review the Q&A posted on the PLHA website as well, as your question may be answered there already. In anticipation of your questions regarding COVID-19 and any alterations to the program deadlines, please note that currently there have been no changes made, and we will announce any changes immediately if they occur. We will post the recorded presentation on the PLHA website in the coming days for anyone who missed it or who would like to review the information again. Today, you'll be hearing from the PLHA team, Jennifer, Danielle, Veronica, and Carlos. We also have Maura and Imais who will be working with us to answer your questions. The topics we will cover today are general program overview, threshold requirements, application review and submittal, what's next, and ACD standard agreements. With that, I will hand over to Carlos to begin the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carlos Nuno, and I will be going over the general program overview and notice of funding availability, commonly referred to as a NOFA. I will be covering why the program was established, the funds available under this program, authority, the guidelines and regulations, award announcements and contracts, the appeal process, and the timeline. The PLHA program was established to provide financial assistance to local governments. Funding will help cities and counties increase supply of housing for households at or below 60% of area median income, or AMI, increase assistance to affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, assist persons experiencing or at risk of homelessness, facilitate housing affordability, particularly for lower and moderate income households, promote projects and programs to meet the local government's unmet share of regional housing needs allocation, ensure geographic equity in the distribution of the funds. HCD is pleased to announce the release of this entitlement and non-entitlement local government formula component. The amount is approximately $195 million for the PLHA program. Entitlement and non-entitlement local governments are eligible for an allocation of PLHA funds. The PLHA funds allocated to each entitlement local government is directly proportionate to each entitlement local government's share of the total 2017 CDBG allocation in California. The PLHA funds allocated to each non-entitlement and local government is based on the sum of two factors: 50% distributed equally amongst eligible non-entitlement local governments, and 50% allocated proportionately based upon HUD's most recent comprehensive housing affordability strategy data. A local government receiving an allocation award under this NOFA shall not use more than 5% of the allocation for administrative costs related to the execution of eligible activities. Now for the authority, SB 2 established the fund and authorizes the department to allocate 70% of monies collected and deposited into the fund beginning in calendar year 2019 to local governments for eligible housing and homelessness activities. The intent of the bill is to provide a permanent, ongoing source of funding to local governments for housing-related projects and programs that assist in addressing the unmet housing needs of their local communities. The Health and Safety Code referenced here requires the department to allocate 90% of PLHA funds based on the federal CDBG formula specified in 42 USC Section 5306, except that the portion allocated to non-entitlement local governments is required to be distributed through a competitive grant program for non-entitlement local governments, which will be a separate NOFRA to be released later this year. It also requires the department to allocate the remaining 10% of PLHA funds equitably to non-entitlement local governments. On to eligible activities. Allocated PLHA funds must be used to carry out one or more of these eligible activities: pre-development, development, acquisition, rehabilitation, preservation of multifamily, residential live work, and rental housing, and must be affordable to extremely low, very low, low, or moderate income households, including necessary operating subsidies. Included in eligible activities are accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs. ADUs can be a pre-development, development, acquisition, rehabilitation, and preservation that meets the needs of a growing workforce earning up to 120% of AMI or 150% of AMI in high-cost areas. ADUs shall be available for occupancy for a term of no less than 30 days. Also, matching portions of funds available through the Low and Moderate Income Housing Fund and matching portions of funds placed into local or regional housing trust funds. Also included are capitalized reserves for services connected to the preservation and creation of new permanent supportive housing. Continuing with eligible activities, assisting persons who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness, including but not limited to providing rapid rehousing, rental assistance, supportive case management services that allow people to obtain and retain housing, operating and capital costs for navigation centers and emergency shelters, new construction, rehabilitation, and preservation of permanent transitional housing. Also, accessibility modification in lower income owner-occupied housing, efforts to acquire and rehabilitate foreclosed or vacant homes and apartments, and homeownership opportunities, including but not limited to down payment assistance. Lastly, fiscal incentives made by a county to a city within the county to incentivize approval of one or more affordable housing projects or matching funds invested by a county in an affordable housing development project in a city within the county, provided that the city has made an equal or greater investment in that project. If funding proposed in local government plans for affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, also known as AOWH, activities is lower than 20% of the monies available in the fund, the department may require local governments to use a specific percentage of their annual formula allocations in some future year for AOWH activities as part of the annual funding process. On to award announcements and contracts. With regard to award announcements and contracts, award letters will be issued this August through October. Standard agreements will go out after the awards, and Jennifer will cover this a little bit later in the presentation. In order to file an appeal, an applicant must submit a written appeal to the department. Additionally, the applicant must provide a detailed description of how the application is complete, eligible, or meets threshold requirements, or provide additional information to resolve the department's determination. Appeals must be received by the department no later than 5 business days from the date of the department's threshold review letter. Any request to appeal the department's decision regarding an application shall be reviewed for compliance. The NOFA application were released on February 26, 2020. Applications are due over the counter beginning April 27 this year through 5 p.m. on July 27 this year. Award announcements will be issued beginning in August. And now I'll pass it on to Veronica, who will be going over the threshold requirements.
Hi, I'm Veronica, and I'll be discussing the threshold requirements for PLHA. First, let's talk about the housing element compliance. Applicants or any delegating local government must have a housing element that has been adopted by the local government's governing body before the application deadline and subsequently determined to be in substantial compliance with state housing element law. When completing your application, you'll find the housing element compliance requirement located in the application under the 302C4 Plan tab. To find the local government's current housing element compliance status, please visit the website listed on the screen. It is also provided in Section 302 of the PLHA guidelines. Applicants must also submit to HCD their annual progress report, or APR, required by General Code Section 65400. Please note there will be no document substitutions to the APR. It must be this report. Applications must be completed in full at the time of submission. The application must correctly follow sections 200 and 301 of the guidelines. Be sure to submit the authorization from the governing board of the applicant to avoid disqualification. In the event that the local government proposes allocating funds to another entity for any activity, the resolution must certify that the local government's selection process avoided any conflicts of interest and must be accessible to the public. Another piece of information that must accompany the application is a plan which details how allocated funds will be used for eligible activities. It must also describe how the local government will prioritize investments so that the supply of housing for households with incomes at or below 60% of AMI is increased. This plan must also describe how it is consistent with the programs in the local government's housing element. The applicant must provide a resolution evidencing that the plan was authorized and adopted by the local government. This resolution must also provide evidence that the public had adequate opportunity to review and comment on the content of the plan. It is important to note that this plan must be for a term of 5 years. Approval by HCD is required for any amendments made during the term of the plan. An example of a required amendment would be reallocations of more than 10% of funds among the approved activities. This would also require approval by the governing body at a publicly noticed public meeting. When completing the application, the tab labeled Section 302C4 Plan has some fields that must be completed for each proposed activity, including 1, a description of each proposed activity and the percentage of funding allocated to it. The description shall specifically include the percentage of funds, if any, directed to affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, or AOWH. 2, the projected number of households to be served at each income level and a comparison to the unmet share of the RHNA at each income level. 3, a description of major steps or actions and a proposed schedule required for the implementation and completion of the activity. And 4, the period of affordability and level of affordability for each activity. Rental projects are required to have an affordability period of at least 55 years. On the same tab of the application, there is language describing the need for each PLHA funded activity to be listed separately. This also includes listing a single activity multiple times if the activity will be assisting households at more than one level of AMI. It should be listed as many times as is necessary to capture all AMI levels that will be assisted, but please only list the percentage of annual funding allocated to the activity a single time to avoid double counting. This is also the tab where you will indicate the authorization and acceptance of the plan, which will need to be provided both as a hard copy and on the USB. The grantee will record a deed restriction against the property if funds are used for the acquisition, construction, or rehab of for sale housing projects. This ensures compliance with one of the following requirements if the property is no longer the primary residence of the homeowner. The PLHA loan and any interest thereon shall be repaid to the local government's PLHA account. The local government shall reuse the repayments consistent with Section 301, or the initial owner and any subsequent owners shall sell the home at an affordable housing cost to a qualified low-income or moderate-income household, or the homeowner and the local government shall share the equity in the unit pursuant to an equity sharing agreement. The grantee shall reuse the proceeds of the equity sharing agreement consistent with this section. If funds are used for the development of an affordable rental housing development, it must be certified that the local government shall use the funds in the form of a low-interest deferred loan to the sponsor of the project. The loan must be evidenced through a promissory note secured by a deed of trust. There must also be a regulatory agreement that will restrict occupancy and rents according to the local government-approved underwriting of the project for at least 55 years. Lastly, a program income reuse plan will be required, and reused funds must be used for eligible activities only. Now we'll hear from Danielle.
I am Danielle, and I will be reviewing the application process. First, please note that the application can be found on the HCD website on the PLHA page as indicated on this slide. The PLHA formula allocation application includes several tabs, all of which should be completed. In the event that a local government opts to delegate their allocation to another local housing trust fund or government, the recipient becomes the applicant. We are requesting that you use the plan template provided, as doing so will assist us in reviewing your application efficiently. As shown on this slide, you will list major actions needed and a proposed schedule for the implementation and completion of the activity. Period of affordability and level of affordability of rental projects must have an affordability period of 55 years. There are a couple of instances where eligible activities by PLHA standards will not meet regional housing needs allocation standards, but these will still be acceptable. If the local government is a county that is an urban county under HUD's distribution of CDBG funds rules, then the plan should use the county's housing element and regional housing needs allocation and not use the cities that are members of the urban county. There is an annual requirement which consists of ongoing tracking of the uses and expenditures of any allocated funds. This report is due July 31st each year and should be submitted to the department's Grant Management Division. If this report is not received by the deadline, then the funds will not be distributed. Applications must meet all eligibility requirements upon submission. So with that in mind, I'd like to give you some tips on application submission. Be sure to select your eligible applicant type and your county or city from the drop-down on the Formula Allocation Application tab. Please do not copy and paste into cells. This often results in mistakes and can also disrupt the flow of the document. Complete the tabs in order, as the tabs are linked and they often flow from one cell to another. Applications must be on the department's forms and cannot be altered or modified. We prefer that you do not submit your application via Apple products, as our required forms do not translate to the Apple equivalent smoothly. Please confirm the application signatory is an authorized signer per the applicant's resolution. Make sure that you are submitting the most recent application version. The tax identification number must match the applicant name. Failure to do this may delay your review. Make sure your application is complete with all relevant exhibits and documentation in a 3-ring binder. In addition, submit original and electronic copies on CD or flash drive, including your Excel application. Applications will be accepted starting April 27th and must be received no later than 5 p.m. on July 27th. HCD will only accept applications through a postal carrier service, such as U.S. Postal Service, UPS, FedEx, or other carrier services that provide date stamp verification confirming delivery to HCD's office. We cannot accept walk-ins, deliveries, personal deliveries, or electronically transmitted applications. No faxes, late, or incomplete applications will be accepted. The last tab of the application is new. The Application Support tab is a form to submit via email to HCD for any technical issues you are having within the application. The form is strictly for technical issues in the application. Please be sure to include all specific information for the location of the error and the level of urgency. Go ahead and submit the completed form to the app support and a carbon copy to the PLHA web email as well. A member of the application support team will respond to your request as soon as possible. Please be sure to submit a completed application. In the event that we need additional information, we will contact you. One last reminder specific to public disclosure. It is important to note that the information included in your application becomes a public record, which is available for review by the public. You are waiving any claim of confidentiality and consenting to the disclosure of all material upon request. Please only provide information specifically requested within the application. And now you'll hear from Jennifer about what happens next.
Hello, everybody. We are near the end of this presentation, just a few more slides. I'm Jennifer, and now we will be discussing what will happen after you submit your application. Once we receive applications, we look to see if they meet the threshold requirements and if applicants have submitted every required and accurate document pertaining to their application. When we see that the application is complete, we will recommend applicants to the Internal Loan Committee, also known as ILC, and then they will determine approval of the application. After the Internal Loan Committee approval, award letters are sent out. We have a goal of sending the standard agreements 90 days after the awards are sent. Once SAs are signed and returned, we will send a complete approval package to our grants management team. And that's when we finish our part in this process. And yeah, now I'll go over a few more things on standard agreements. Our goal of sending out SAs within 90 days is to distribute the money as soon as possible. We will be able to meet our goal on our end if an applicant's communication methods are updated, such as a correct email address, phone number, etc. Please ensure this information is available to us. We want to be able to reach you. Standard agreements are normally on a 5-year term, but specifically for the purposes of the PLHA's formula component in this NOFA, these SAs will state an estimated 5-year allocation, which you can see in Appendix C for the number. The reason behind a 5-year allocation is to avoid amending the SAs and expedite the disbursement of the PLHA funds for future years. Next, I'll go over what applicants should expect for applying to their second year of allocations. For year 1 awarded applicants, the department will publish a memo next year with each jurisdiction's annual fund allocation to notify them of its availability. For eligible applicants to get their second year's funding, they will need to submit a 1-page letter stating their acceptance of funding allocation and with these 3 requirements, meeting the housing element compliance component, submission of an APR, and an annual report. Applicants who did not apply in year 1 may submit a full and complete application the second year of funding availability. Also, jurisdictions applying for the first time in year 2 will be eligible to receive their year 1 allocation funding as well. For the year 1 applicant, the department will send out an agreement summary, also known as the California Standardized Form 215, which will allow the applicant to spend the new year's fund allocation. For first-time applicants applying in year 2, their complete application will be sent to our grants management team and will receive their approval, essays, and so on, as mentioned before. So this is all we have about the essays. Now we will go over a few common mistakes the department sees in applications. Some common mistakes we have seen in the past are resolutions not matching the name and organizational type with the application, as well as the TIN and the requesting amount found in the resolution and application package. The requesting amount on the resolution should be the 5-year amount found on Appendix C. The authorized representative must match their name, title, designee letter, if applicable, in their signature block. Spelling and punctuation in applications is very important. For example, if your entity name is registered as ABCL.P. then you must include the periods on all other documents. It cannot just be ABCLP. Other common mistakes we have seen in the past is that applicants don't fill out the vote count complete. We are looking for none or 0 for that question. It cannot be left blank. Then the signatory resolution must be different from authorized representative. We have now reached the end of this presentation, so let me quickly share with you a few resources. Here are some links to some of the resources we used throughout the presentation. You can also sign up for HCD updates on our website. You can select multiple programs on which to receive emailed news and updates. This way you won't miss out on anything new. You can also follow HCD on social media, which is a great way to stay informed on programs and updates. Any future questions regarding the application program, you may email us at plha.hcd.ca.gov. Remember, our goal is to ensure that you receive your full allocation. We are here to help you turn in a complete and accurate application. We will now open the floor to questions for any of today's presentation. Thank you.
So we are going to wait for a couple minutes for people to type in their questions. And once we reach the 5 minutes, we will start answering those questions. Thank you. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and read the questions and we'll answer them live. Thank you.
Do eligible pre-development expenses for affordable housing development include costs to pay a consultant to assist in working with a developer and preparing a site for development? We do not have a housing staff and need a consultant to assist with those tasks.
So this is Maura Monahan. It sounds like the consultant that you're talking about is not a specific, like an environmental consultant or a relocation consultant or something like that. That's an eligible project cost. It sounds like this is for administrative purposes. So the consultant would have to be paid out of administrative, the 5% administrative allowance.
If the funds will be used for the development of affordable ownership housing, is it also required that the assistance be in the form of a loan to the original developer?
There's more than one way to provide affordable ownership housing. So this is one of the ways. You could make a loan to a developer to develop a small or even not so small single family project, which is then sold to qualified low or moderate income homeowners. So that's one way that you could do it. You could also just assist owner or home buyers, potential home buyers, to go out and find their own homes and assist them with a down payment assistance loan. So there's several different ways of accomplishing the same affordable owner-occupied workforce housing goal.
Since the funds can be used for affordable housing construction, operating subsidies, or to capitalize a support services reserve, is it understood that we can save up or bank a few years worth of allocations for that purpose?
So in the guidelines section 300E, there's a limit on how much you can have in your account, so to speak, without having committed it. And it depends on how large your allocation is on an annual basis. So it's a lengthy section, so please refer to that. It will say you can have an uncommitted amount of no more than blank, depending on your situation. And by commitment, we mean that you would have passed a resolution. Your governing body will have adopted a resolution to fund a specific project or program activity with a specific amount of money with specific details about how that is going to be done. If it's a project, it would have the project address, the borrower, the terms of the loan. If it's a program activity, like say a down payment assistance program, it would say we allocate $400,000 to down payment assistance to be used within a relatively short period of time. It can't be open-ended, very long and open-ended.
Aside from the 30-day use requirement, will there be any requirements for monitoring of tenant incomes if we use funds to construct ADUs? Are there any long-term use requirements for ADUs?
So the length of the affordability period for the ADUs is up to the local government to establish a requirement for. The only requirement that the state has is that the ADU has to be available for no less than a 30-day rental period to prevent Airbnb type rentals.
In our county, 2 of the cities and county intend to pool our funds. The county will be the designated applicant and administrative entity. Does HCD have a template for the cities to use for resolutions to authorize allocating the funds to the county? And is there a template for the written agreement?
We have the normal resolution template on our website as part of the application. It's part of the application form. So it was posted last week. There was a short delay in posting that. You could adapt that resolution for the, amend it according to the situation. However, the written agreement that's required, the legally binding agreement that's required between a delegating local government and an administrating local government, we do not have any template for that.
For the homeownership program, can we use HUD or NSP income limits rather than the state posted limits?
No, you'll need to use our state posted limits. Each income limit is different in its own different way. So we're requiring ours to be used.
Can these funds be used for land acquisition for USDA self-help homeownership programs?
Land acquisition can be part of the project. Obviously, land cost is an eligible development cost. But I would not advise just land banking, buying land, and then taking a chance that there may or may not be the other pieces of the development come together, because you will need to report in your annual report on completed projects, what you actually created in terms of units and so on, and or services provided, and just buying land wouldn't really cut it.
Can funds be used to support an affordable home ownership project that is already under construction?
It could be, but it begs the question, what happened? I mean, if the project was under construction, did it suddenly run into problems that resulted in a shortfall? Or is this going to create a developer fee that wasn't needed before, and now all of a sudden there's a windfall of funds that provides an unexpected developer fee? So I would urge you to look at those questions.
In terms of rental assistance and assisting households at risk of homelessness, could PLHA funding be used for one-time emergency rent payments where the jurisdiction does not have a contract with individual recipients?
That's an interesting question. We haven't had that question before. One-time emergency rent payments. Let us have a discussion about that, and we'll put that in the Q&A. Thank you.
Since the amount is subject to revenues and it can change from year to year, what happens if the amount requested for the 5-year changes? Does that affect the application?
So the 5-year allocation amount that we published in the NOFA is a guesstimate with a 20% add-on to make sure that we don't have to amend standard agreements, because you have to have a ceiling amount in the standard agreement. As long as you don't go above that ceiling, it doesn't have to be amended. So that amount might not be the amount. I mean, we don't know, but it might not be the amount that you actually will receive over a 5-year period. We really don't know what the coronavirus will do in terms of the revenue for this year, for 2020. I can't imagine there's a lot of home transactions going on right now. So I would say just only bank on having your 1-year allocation each year, 1 year at a time. But think more broadly, but don't bank on it.
That brings us to the end of the presentation and the end of the questions. So we thank you all for joining us via webinar. If you have any additional questions, you can email us at plha@hcd.ca.gov, and we'll be glad to answer those questions as soon as we can. Also refer to our Q&A, which is posted online, for any common questions. Thank you again.